I'm Jeremy. Today's day 333 of reading. Today reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Let's get started. We are currently on page 685. Let's go. A spell to subdue me. When I had recovered my strength, I thought only of finding my master, of returning to his service. How did your father subdue you? Said Dumbledore. The Imperious Curse, Moody said. I was under my father's control. I was forced to wear an invisibility cloak day and night. I was always with the house elf. She was my keeper and caretaker. She pitied me, persuaded my father to give me occasional treats, rewards for my good behavior. Master Barty, sobbed Winky through her hands. You isn't ought to tell them we is getting in trouble. Did anybody ever discover that you were alive? Said Dumbledore softly. Did anyone know except your father and the house elf? Yes, said Crouch, his eyelids flickering again. A witch in my father's office, Bertha Jorkins. She came to the house with papers for my father's signature. He was not at home. Winky showed her inside and returned to the kitchen. To me. But Bertha Jorkins heard Winky talking to me. She came to investigate. She heard enough to guess who was hiding under the invisibility cloak. My father arrived home. She confronted him. He put a very powerful memory charm on her to make her forget what she found out. Too powerful. He said it damaged her memory permanently. Why is she coming to nose in my master's private business? Sobbed Winky. Why isn't she leaving us be? Tell me about the Quidditch World Cup, said Dumbledore. Winky talked my father into it, said Crouch, still in the same monotonous voice. She spent months persuading him. I had not left the house in years. I had loved Quidditch. Let him go, she said. He will be in his invisibility cloak. He can watch. Let him smell fresh air for once. She said my mother would have wanted it. She told my father that my mother had died to give me freedom. She had not saved me for a life of imprisonment. He agreed in the end. It was carefully planned. My father led me and Winky up to the tuck box early in the day. Winky was to say that she was saving a seat for my father. I was to sit there, invisible. When everyone had left the box, we would emerge. Winky would appear to be alone. Nobody would ever know. But Winky didn't know that I was growing stronger. I was starting to fight my father's Imperious Curse. There were times when I was almost myself again. There were brief periods where I seemed outside of his control. It happened there, in the top box. It was like walking out of a deep sleep. I found myself out in public, in middle of the match, and I saw in front of me a wand sticking out of a boy's pocket. I had not been allowed a wand since before Azkaban. I stole it. Winky didn't know. Winky is frightened of heights. She had her face hidden. Master Barty, you bad boy, whispered Winky, tears trickling between her fingers. So you took the wand, said Dumbledore. And what did you do with it? We went back to the tent, said Crouch. Then we heard them. We heard the Death Eaters, the one who had never been to Azkaban, the ones who had never suffered from my master. They had turned their backs on him. They were not enslaved, as I was. They were free to seek him, but they did not. They were merely making sport of muggles. The sound of their voices awoke me. My mind was clearer than it had been in years. I was angry. I had the wand. I wanted to attack them for their disloyalty to my master. My father had left the tent. He had gone to free muggles. Winky was afraid to see me so angry. She used her own brand of magic to bind me to her. She pulled me from the tent, pulled me into the forest, away from the Death Eaters. I tried to hold her back. I wanted to return to the campsite. I wanted to show those Death Eaters what loyalty to the Dark Lord meant, and to punish them for their lack of it. I used the stolen wand to cast a dark mark into the sky. The Ministry wizards arrived. They shot stunning spells everywhere. One of the spells came to the trees where Winky and I stood. The bond connecting us was broken. We were both stunned. When Winky was discovered, my father knew I must be nearby. He searched the bushes where she had been found and felt me lying there. He waited until the other ministry members had left the forest. He put me back under the imperious curse and took me home. He dismissed Winky. She had failed him. She had let me acquire a wand. She had almost let me escape. Winky let out a wail of despair. Now it was just Father and I, alone in the house. And then, Mr. Crouch's head rolled on his neck, and an insane grin spread across his face. My master came for me. She arrived at our house late one night in the arms of his servant Wormtail. My master had found out I was still alive. He had captured Bertha Jorkins in Albania. He had tortured her. She told him a great deal. She told him about the Triwizard Tournament. She told him about the old Moody, who was going to teach at Hogwarts. He tortured her until he broke through the memory charm my father had placed upon her. She told him I had escaped from Azkaban. She told him my father kept me in prison to prevent me from seeking my master. And so my master knew that I was still his faithful servant, perhaps the most faithful of all. My master conceived a plan, based upon the information Bertha had given him. He needed me. He arrived at our house near midnight. My father answered the door. The smiles spread wider over Crouch's face, as though recalling the sweetest memory of his life. Winky's petrified brown eyes were visible through her fingers. She seemed too appalled to speak. It was very quick. My father was placed under an imperious curse by my master. Now my father was the one imprisoned, controlled. My master forced him to go about his business as usual, to act as though nothing was wrong, and I was released. I awoke. I was myself again, alive as I hadn't been in years. And what did Lord Voldemort ask you to do? Said Dumbledore. He asked me whether I was ready to risk everything for him. I was ready. It was my dream, my greatest ambition, to serve him, to prove myself to him. He told me he needed a faithful servant at Hogwarts, a servant who would guide Harry Potter through a Triwizard Tournament without appearing to do so, a servant who would watch over Harry Potter, ensure he reached the Triwizard Cup, turn the cup into a portkey, which would take the first person to touch it to my master. But first, you needed Alastor Moody, said Dumbledore. His blue eyes were blazing, though his voice remained calm. Wormtail and I did it. We had prepared the polyjuice potion beforehand. We journeyed to his house. Moody put up a struggle. There was a commotion. We managed to subdue him just in time, force him into a compartment of his own magical trunk, took some of his hair and added it to the potion. I drank it. I became Moody's double. I took his leg and his eye. I was ready to face Arthur Weasley when he had arrived to sort out the muggles who had heard a disturbance. I made the dustbins move around the yard. I told Arthur Weasley I had heard intruders in my yard who had set off the dustbins. Then I packed up Moody's clothes and the dark detectors, put them in the trunk with Moody, and set off for Hogwarts. I kept him alive, under the Imperious Curse. I wanted to be able to question him, to find out about his past, learn his habits, so that I could fool even Dumbledore. I also needed his hair to make the Polyjuice Potion. The other ingredients were easy. I stole Boomsling from the dungeons. When the Potion Master found me in his office, I said I was under orders to search it. And what became of Wormtail after you attacked Moody? Said Dumbledore. Wormtail returned to care for my master in my father's house, and to keep watch over my father. But your father escaped, said Dumbledore. Yes, after a while, he began to fight the Imperious Curse just as I had done. There were periods where he knew what was happening. My master decided it was no longer safe for my father to leave the house. He forced him to send letters to the ministry instead. He made him write and say he was ill. But Wormtail neglected his duty. He was not watchful enough. My father escaped. My master guessed that he was heading for Hogwarts. My father was going to tell Dumbledore everything, to confess. He was going to admit that he had smuggled me from Azkaban. My master sent me words of my father's escape. He told me not to stop him at all costs. So I waited and watched. I used a map that